Welcome to The Business Behind Your Business, the podcast where we delve into the financial strategies and insights that drive success for small and medium-sized business owners. I'm your host, Paul Sweeney, and in each episode we bring you expert guests who share practical advice, real-world experiences, and actionable tips to empower you on your business journey. Whether you're a seasoned entrepreneur or just starting out, get ready to uncover the secrets to success and gain valuable insights into the business behind your business. Welcome back to the Business Behind Your Business podcast. I'm your host, Paul Sweeney, and we've been talking in some of our recent episodes about the idea of startups and how you create a new business and what's your business idea, how's it going to be successful, how will you know it's going to be successful. And we've also had some guests on in the past, and I'm thinking of a lot of the technology space particularly, but where they have started their business as a result of a problem that they had inside their current business. So the business they went and started was to solve a problem that they had. And we hear a lot of startups come up with an idea of a problem they're going to solve, but the ones that are successful, the ones that we look to, the Canvas, the Atlassians, the huge startups that are getting all the funding, there's something more to just solving a problem. And what we're going to do today in this episode with our guest is we're going to untap some of the reasons why you need to have more than just a problem-solving idea, and why. What are the keys to making that more successful? Look, the guest that we've got today, I'm quite excited about this. Robert Wolfe is the founder and former CEO of Moosejaw and CrowdRise, but more recently, Robert started Zeck. Zeck is entirely reimagining the miserable board meeting process. Now, that is quite a jump from, we're going to find out a bit more about Moosejaw and CrowdRise, but it's quite a different problem solved by Zeck. And the process behind that's going to be quite interesting to unpack, because Moosejaw was a tiny shop, and Robert says he started it when he had really big hair. And look, if you watch any of the video for me, Robert's still got his hair. I'm very challenged hair-wise, so always got a bit of hair envy when I interview a guest with great hair. But Moosejaw's aim was to make retail and e-commerce fun and engaging, and quite cultish. Moosejaw is a quite cultish name. I'm interested to hear a bit more about unpacking that brand. But that was acquired by Walmart. Then Robert moved on to a company called CrowdRise, which was about fundraising for non-for-profits, which was eventually acquired by GoFundMe. So there's another interesting story there. But going from those two successful enterprises to where he is now with Zeck, looking at solving this problem of miserable board meetings, interesting process. And there's another part to play in that we're going to talk about. I won't spoil it yet. You have to keep listening to hear what that actually is. Look, Robert, welcome to the microphone. It's great to have you with us.
Thank you.
Yeah, look, quite a different journey, because you've got very different businesses that you've been involved with. But I guess, I mentioned that a lot of business owners start a business to solve a problem, but not much more happens. That's where things start to fall apart. So you have three very different businesses. Can you share a bit of the idea about how you went about starting up those businesses? What was the trigger?
Yeah, I'll start with Zeck, our current business, and just to echo, we're reimagining the entire board meeting process. So I'm sure most, if not all, of your listeners have engaged in a board meeting as either or both an operator and a board member. But to say that we built Zeck based on our own life experience is definitely an understatement. So at our first company, Moosejaw, we really despised the entire board meeting process. It was wildly stressful and was not particularly valuable. And then at our second company, CrowdRise, we had the exact same experience. And that was our leadership team would go pencils down for 100 hours to build the presentation. We would send it to our board in a format that they couldn't read on their phone. So if any of you everyone in the audience pulls out their most recent slide deck and tries to read it on their phone, you cannot read a PowerPoint on your phone. But the very worst part was we had these amazing board members who we loved. And we would meet in New York or LA for this supposedly grandiose board meeting. and we would get into the room and I would quite literally reread them a deck that they had already read. So start to finish, the entire process was a waste of everyone's time. I genuinely thought we were the only ones who were bad at it. It wasn't until after our companies were acquired and I got out there in the world and started serving on boards and advising other companies that I realized this angst we were having was universal. And we went out and to solve that.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, if you are a small, medium business owners and you're hearing the words board meeting, don't switch off because, you know, a lot of the times, a lot of the decision making, the key processes, the meetings that you should be having with your advisors and your key employees, I know that you're putting them off because the whole process is something that you don't enjoy. You don't enjoy getting that information together, putting it into a format that people can discuss, summarizing the key points. It's a problem. It's a painful exercise, and that's why you don't do it.
Yeah, you know what? When people ask me, and I used to, my prior job, I described myself as a board advisor, right? It's sort of a made up title, but that's where I was spending my time. And earlier stage companies would say to me, should I have a board? My answer in the Moosejaw days would have been hell no, right? Because my idea was we have no idea what we're doing and no one else does either. So we wouldn't have an advisor. That was wrong. There are people who have at least failed at the problems we were trying to solve enough times that they had a better path forward. But for us, having a board really flipped the way that we ran the business. I used to say that we would go from project to project or really crisis to crisis. When we first had a board, whether that's a real board where you're actually having to deal with governance or a group of advisors who you're just meeting with quarterly, for example, you typically create goals that you're responsible to that group for hitting. And for us, we were hell bent on hitting those goals. So for me as the CEO, it really changed the way I ran the business from trying to be visionary enough to go after those goals as opposed to spending my time 100% of my time in the grind every day. Now I'm definitely a grinder, so I live it along with every single person on the team. But at the same time, I view my job as to hit those board approved goals.
And those board-approved goals and that focus, that strategy, you know, you mentioned being involved in the grind. You know, you can't keep doing, or you can't keep focusing on those high-level goals if you're doing the grind. But this whole process of collating information for a board meeting, for a meeting with advisors, you know, one of the obvious reasons why people don't do it is the time involved to collate it and the pain there.
You know, one of our ended up being one of our VC investors at our prior company and our current company. When we were talking with him, and this was years ago, and he's super smart. And I said to him, "Hey, we do not want to have our job be reporting to you, and because we have to run the business." And his answer was, "I will never ask you for a report that you shouldn't already have." And he was right. And that's how we proceeded. And so the reports that we use to run our business, because you shouldn't be flying blindly, are the same reports that we ended up uh, sending out in some monthly format to our key investors. So once we learned that developing these kind of systems actually didn't create bureaucracy, it made our jobs easier and actually more fun, then having a better relationship with our investors and our board became easy because there was more alignment, and communicating with them was so much easier.
And then, of course, once you're more aligned and communicating and focused, I guess now, you know, naturally you're going to be a lot more focused on the business activities, the actions that you take each day, pushing your business towards achieving those goals.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. We're pretty maniacal about our systems, and we've learned that over time. Again, I used to think that systems um, they would they would end up creating this organization that was like a cruise ship you couldn't turn around. But again, I was wrong and learned that over time by failing. And those systems again make everybody's job easier because everybody's already aligned.
Mm-hmm. And so you mentioned you've had this issue in other businesses, and you've been serving on boards which have come through that same process, that same angst.
Yeah.
So why do you think you've been successful with Zeck in creating this? Look, to be honest, the whole idea of a board meeting is not something that gets people excited.
Yeah.
So you've taken it, but you've created a solution to a major pain and made it very workable. You've made it fun, as you've said. Why do you think you've been successful? And looking back as well as you've had other successful businesses, what's been one of the key drivers to take from just having a great idea and solving someone's problem to making that a genuine solution, a viable product, a profitable product, and one that you've actually had a lot of interest in. You've raised money from investors. You've sold
Mm-hmm.
prior businesses to larger companies. What do you think
Yeah.
the key's been?
Well, first, I think it's the team. We have a unbelievable, relentless team. We go really fast. I've worked with most of them, if not through the Zeck in our prior company, but even Zeck, CrowdRise, and Moosejaw. So we sort of speak each other's languages already, which is awesome and very lucky. I'm a big believer in luck, so that's really lucky. And also, we have found ourselves in a place with all three of our companies, and it's sort of coincidental, where we're taking this miserable process and trying to make it fun. So I don't know how familiar your audience will be with backpackers and climbers, but they tend to take themselves very seriously. And at Moosejaw, we wanted to make that fun. So we had trucks that would go between our shops, and the back of the truck said, "Driver carries less than $50 cash and is entirely naked." And so that was an example of the kind of levity we tried to bring to that space. And then if you think about the giving space in 2010, for example, we thought it was not only guilt-ridden and burdensome, but it was really hard to donate to a charity. There was friction all over the place. So we thought, okay, if we can take these same lessons we learned at Moosejaw and actually make the giving space fun, then maybe people would donate to the causes they cared about more often, and then, and perhaps more importantly, tell their friends about it. So if you think about, again, 15 years ago, it was tactless to tell people how you gave back. People didn't do that. Now you can't scroll on Instagram or Facebook for more than 3 seconds without seeing how someone gives back to cause. And I think we played some small role in that because people were proud of it. And then lastly, at Zeck, you think about sort of, again, the misery of the board meeting, something that everyone dreads. We thought that we could flip that. So if you go to our homepage, Zeck.app, you see a Wedding Crashers quote and an Almost Famous quote on our homepage. That is atypical of the seriousness you think about when you think through what does a board meeting look like. But for us, if we can make it that people dread their board meetings less, then they'll be more successful. So that's been a really a more a coincidental through line with all of our companies.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, that's good. That's good. And look, you've solved a real problem. You've made it fun. You've got surrounded yourself with great people. You get advice, but you're genuinely invested in those, I guess, those outcomes. You've got, I guess, a passion for the problems that you're solving. That seems to be a little bit different to a lot of the conversations I've had or seen with founders, startups, where they've seen an idea that's going to solve the world's problems, and they're very high profile, but they don't seem to have that genuine investment in the problem. They don't seem to have experienced it themselves. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I just it was so stressful, the board meeting. I mean, I know all your listeners or many of your listeners are running their own companies, and it is so hard. Everything about it is so hard. But for us, our board and investors were the lifeblood of the company, and they were so important to our future. And we wanted to impress them, and we were so bad at it. We didn't have the map. We didn't know what they wanted to see or how they could help us. We didn't know the format that we should present to them in, and it was really hard. And again, we didn't know that everyone was feeling it. So when we started to get it out there and we realized that every company is feeling this pain, and if you think about nonprofits, so nonprofits in the US are mandated to have a board meeting. There are 2 million US-based nonprofits. That's minimum 8 million board meetings a year. They're all bad, all of them. So if you think about if we can improve that process, the kind of impact that we could have in the nonprofit space alone is wild, right? So we are deeply invested in trying to flip that because we have lived the problem.
Mm-hmm. And look, I think a lot of people are thinking the board meeting idea, the concept is really that larger company, but you mentioned non-profits there, and I know from my experience that with non-profits, you've also got a lot of volunteers, so their time is very important, their time is very limited. If we can reduce that burden there and make that process more streamlined, more fun, as you say, then there's a win there. And then, of course, the meeting process is going to be more focused on delivering the best outcomes for that organisation.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Look. I can't talk to you without raising this. You're talking about fun and the pain here. Highly profiled with Zeck is the fact that there's this actor involved in the company as well, a guy called Edward Norton.
Yes.
Which is interesting because talking about actors having being involved in business, that we seem to see here and see more, but generally around promotion. But this is something a little bit different. Do you want to share a little bit around that process there?
Yeah, Edward is a badass. He's super smart and very engaged. So Edward and I we started our prior company, CrowdRise, together. So we've been working together for 15 years. And we were actually away together and with a group of other people who ended up becoming engaged in Zeck in different ways. And I had to leave the group for a board meeting. And I came back after 3 hours and said, that was the most miserable 3 hours of my life. And I said, Edward, remember that scene in Fight Club when you were punching yourself in the face? I think that was how everyone around the table felt. And so we started bantering about everyone's experience with board meetings, both as operators and as board members. And people started to get hyped up about this is a problem that needs to be solved. So Edward has been enthusiastic about it from day one, and is to say he is the face of it would be that's 180 degrees from what he is. I mean, we're texting and on the phone every day, including earlier today, from everything from we should change this on the homepage to there is a private equity company that I just connected with that is wildly excited about using Zeck for their portfolio companies. So he is engaged at every level, and it's fun. It's very lucky.
Yeah, no, it's interesting to see that, and I know he's raised also some of his real world problems with some of the organisations that he's been involved with.
For sure.
Yeah. So it's great to see that, and I think sometimes we don't think of them as real people, philanthropists being involved, actively engaged in the community. We tend to think of them as the person on the screen. I think, as soon as Edward Norton comes up on my screen, I think of the Hulk.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Look, a confession here, and if my kids are listening, they're going to have a go at me about this, but Edward Norton is my favourite version of the Hulk.
Yeah,
absolutely the most genuine, and probably and look, you talked about his passion and his I guess the way he pursues the outcomes. That sort of comes through, and I think in the way he acts and delivers. So
yeah, I don't know. Is A Complete Unknown, the Bob Dylan movie, is that out in Australia yet?
I've got to, I think I may have heard of that, but I'm not sure if it's actually out yet.
Oh, it's so good. So everyone should see it. A Complete Unknown. It's Timothy Chalamet plays Bob Dylan, but Edward's in the movie. He plays Pete Seeger. But it's the move, forgetting Timothy Chalamet and Edward. The movie is amazing. So it's worthwhile seeing for sure.
Absolutely. I'll keep an eye out for that one. Look, yeah. So Robert, we've talked about Zeck. I guess the question that a lot of people are asking now is, how do we get involved with that? How do we find out more about Zeck and how we can use it in our own organizations?
Yeah, I mean, you could just go to Zeck.app, but the best way is to get a quick demo, because seeing it is certainly better and does better justice to the product than me or really anyone talking about it, because it is so visual. But we're basically recreating the whole experience. So there is no one wakes up in the morning and reads their news in a PowerPoint. So that I don't mean this. I hope this shouldn't be disparaging. The use case for a slide deck was never to drive engagement. It's for a presentation or a lecture or a TED talk. So the fact that we're using something that was built for a different use case and was also built pre-iPhone and hasn't changed is just crazy, right? So if you think about DocuSign and Carta and Asana and these tools that have modernized the way that we sign documents or do our cap table or do task management, they've been super, super successful and impactful, yet we're doing the board meeting the same way we did 50 years ago. That's just crazy. So we're modernizing the approach, and it is a very familiar experience because nobody likes to read or create content in flat rectangles. So the content creation experience, particularly now that we're embracing AI, is mind-blowing. You're sending something to your board they can actually easily read on their phone, but most importantly, you're getting into the room and you're 5 steps ahead, and your entire board meeting can be forward thinking and strategic, as opposed to dealing with minutia and rereading a presentation. So it really does modernize the whole approach.
Yeah, we love that. Just resources are scarce for every organization, and time is one of those most valuable resources. If we can claw back that time, that's a win to start with. But if we can make sure that our efforts, our activities are more focused on the end goal and achieving those, which they will be, because we're not going to be in that board meeting reading through the meeting or the volume of documents that we didn't have time to read because we were too busy beforehand, or we were too busy creating our portion of those documents. It's a much better outcome. And like you said, I've seen so many businesses clinging to processes that were designed, I guess, 20, 30, and you mentioned 50 years ago. It's not uncommon to see a business owner still using a process then because they haven't looked at how can I do this better, more efficiently.
Right. Embracing those systems was the biggest failure we had at our first company, is that we were so worried about going out of business I thought we were going out of business every day for the first 10 years. And so we were so hesitant to develop or invest in systems. And that was the biggest mistake. So anyone says like, oh, do you have any regrets? That is my regret, is we didn't invest in systems soon enough.
Look, Robert, you're not alone there. I talk to a lot of business owners, and I often hear from them that they're too busy doing the business and making sure it survives from day to day to invest in systems and processes.
Absolutely.
And then on the other side, when we talk to business owners who first invest in systems and processes, they have so much time to focus on growing the business.
Yeah, we actually at Zeck, unlike our prior two companies, we raised money pre-product so that we could invest in systems like having Salesforce from day one, for example, and instead of waiting 2 years and having to backtrack. That was really important for us. So if we are completely insane and crazy to have launched a third business. I mean, I really think something is wrong with my head, but if we were going to do it, we wanted to make sure we were optimized for success.
Yeah. Look, Robert, one of the things that's really come through is that you've got a genuine commitment to this. It's a genuine passion of you, that you are taking the problems that you experienced in those prior businesses and making sure that there's a solution available for business owners everywhere so they don't have to experience that same
definitely
level of discomfort.
Yeah.
And look, there's going to be a lot of business owners using Zeck who are going to be extremely appreciative of the time that you've given them back in their lives so that they can focus on those really important activities.
Yeah, the AI, now that we're deep in it, it is really cool. And we built it for this specific use case. So it's not like going into ChatGPT where you'd have to run the prompts 50 times. You basically, the way we describe it is you go from author to editor. So without being remotely hyperbolic, you're going to save 80% of your time. So if you think about, you have 6, 7 people spending 10 hours each working on these presentations, and we can cut that 10 hours to 2. So the opportunity cost is crazy that they can now spend those 8 hours working on the business instead of creating slides. It's really been game changing.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great news. You've taken a subject that people don't want to talk about, they want to ignore, they want to hope it goes away, and you've turned it into, I guess, really a strategic tool. Well, for many business owners, like you said, it's compulsory for a lot of organizations to have these meetings. It's good governance. But if we take it from something that you have to do to something that's actually really going to help your business, and it's feasible to do it in terms of the time frame, then that's a great outcome that you're achieving.
Yeah, no, thank you. I think there was this natural antagonism between leadership teams and the board because historically the communication has been so poor. So as a company, there was nothing better for us than the breakdown that happened last year between OpenAI, between their leadership team and the board, when everything fell apart, because rarely is this stuff front page news. And for us, we ran ads against it, because the idea that this poor communication could cause so much chaos at one of the most notable companies in the world was pretty crazy. And now they're sort of wrapping their arms around it, but that is not atypical. So Zeck really does solve that communication gap.
Yeah, fantastic. Robert, appreciate your time. It's been great to talk with you today. Really enjoyed the conversation and hearing about your experience and how you've come up with the solution here. Again, so the website zeck.app. Encourage for listeners to go and check that out and see the demo, find out more about the Zeck's experience and how it's going to help them in their business. And look, Robert, how else should people get in touch with you or follow you?
No, that website's the best place.
Website's the best place? Absolutely, not a problem. We'll direct people to the website, zeck.app, and encourage you to engage in those new tools. Don't keep doing things the way you were doing them 30, 50 years ago. Make the change, and you won't regret it. So, Robert, thank you again. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Appreciate it.
That's a wrap for this episode of The Business Behind Your Business. We hope you found today's discussion insightful and valuable for your business journey. Before we go, don't forget to subscribe to our podcast on your favourite platform. Share it with fellow business owners who could benefit, and send in your burning questions, because we love hearing from you. Missed any of our previous episodes or looking for additional resources to help grow your business? Head over to our website at thebusinessbehindyourbusiness.com. There you'll find our full archive of past episodes, along with show notes, transcripts, and links to valuable resources mentioned in each episode. Your journey to business success continues at thebusinessbehindyourbusiness.com. Until next time, stay inspired, stay informed, and keep building the business of your dreams.